Bonjour à vous tous, aujourd'hui je vais vous parler de comment j'ai appris à parler la langue française. But for my English friends, it's going to be in English, so there's nothing to worry about in terms of understanding what I say. Before I learned to speak French, I saw the language as very complex, very difficult, like something you couldn't make headway in. I couldn't understand a thing, practically. The only few things I could say was, je m'appelle Kwame, and bonjour, bonsoir, that was it. I couldn't understand anything, especially in school. I used to sometimes think that it was a subject meant to fail students. It was very difficult. I couldn't understand anything, and I was always afraid of my friend teacher. He had this cane that whenever he came to class and you failed to answer any of his questions, he'll give you 2 strokes at your back. So I was afraid of him, just like everybody else. Very few people liked French. I don't know why. Somehow it wasn't attractive to learn. It was a fearful subject. I was just going through the motion, surviving through my exams, and in the end, whatever the result, it didn't matter much to me. Everybody's experiences in life is different. One of the few things I remember in the early days was reading a passage in class. There was this passage in basic school, class 4, where you have to read a passage. And anytime we do reading in class, the teacher stands behind you. So you're always fearful of what is going to come at your back. He always had a cane ready to discipline you when you failed or when you mispronounced words or destroyed the language. So one day we are supposed to read a passage called Ama e le couteau de mama. And everybody was afraid. You read and then he will tell you to stop wherever he wants. In a class of about 40 students, we had to each take turn reading. Fortunately for me, I was on the last row in class. All I could hear was the whip at people's back as he progressed towards me gradually. And lucky for me, as soon as he got to my table, it was time to close. So when I went home that day, I was reading the passage. My sister was already good in it, my elder sister, so I asked her to teach me how to read this particular passage. Ama elokuto de mama. And it went well. She was guiding me through the passage. I was reading, making sure that I wasn't making any mistake. And mind you, I should have even started from the middle portion because that was where we ended in class. But I was so scared that I started right from the beginning. And so I was reading, being corrected. And I spent the whole day. That was the first time I actually learned when I came back from school. The remaining of the afternoon through to the night, I was just reading and rehearsing my passage. Early morning on my way to school, I was still reading this passage. And when it was finally time for French lesson, I was expecting the teacher. So as soon as he came, he went straight to my colleague at the side and told him to start reading. And immediately, 2 strokes hit his back. And I began to pant, I began to shake a little because at the time he was better than me in French, and if his reading hadn't taken him even 40 seconds to be caned, I began to worry. So when it got to my turn, I would turn and look at his face, and then he said, "Look in your book." So I began to read. Ama et le couteau de maman. Un jour, elle m'apprend le couteau de maman. Le couteau est très tranchant. Ama joue avec le couteau. So I kept going, and I began to turn to look at his face to see whether he was looking at me or whether he was holding the cane ready to strike. And while I had my face turned looking at him, I was still reciting the passage. You know, I had learned the whole book to the extent that I could read it without looking in the book. So I turned and I was reciting and continuing. Mama di ama let's look at those throat tranchant. And he was smiling actually, and he said, continue. So he gave me some confidence, and he allowed me to finish reading the whole passage, and everybody clapped for me. That was the first time I actually enjoyed my French lesson. Ama elokuto de mama. Oh. How I really learned to speak French. Along the way in my journey around class 6, I had opportunity to go and stay in Cote d'Ivoire for a while. Usually during my long vacations, I would go there, spend some few weeks and come. But I wasn't interested in learning the language. Whenever I went, I'm either watching television, eating, sleeping, playing video games, and I'll come back the same without any improvement. So when I went this time around, I had to school in Cote d'Ivoire. It was an English school, Morning Glory International. And it was mixed with students, so many nationalities were there. So some spoke French, some spoke English, and you could interact with anyone you want. Everybody spoke whatever language they wanted. We had French classes, of course, also French as a subject. And so I was in this small group where just a few of us couldn't speak French. And we were learning together. But back home, I realized that I like to go out at this time. I didn't want to stay indoors. So I made some friends outside in the street. We go out, we roam together, we play football. And before I come there, the first time I began to really learn French, there were some kids playing football behind our house. And I was interested. I wanted to go and play. So I called my younger sister who could speak French already at the time. And I asked her, how do you say, I want to play football? She tells me, je veux jouer aussi, or j'aimerais jouer avec vous. So I'll take about 5 minutes to really learn that phrase to the core, learn it so much, and then I walked to them and I spoke to the first person who looked like the controller of the game, the owner of the football, let me put it that way. So I told him, je veux jouer aussi, and he pointed to the other post and said something in French. And I knew, of course, that it meant you can play with this team or you go and join this team. So I quickly went and I was picking up words as the ball went on. So whenever there's a foul, I'll hear foot, foot, foot. So I knew that foot was foul. I began to add things up myself right on the pitch. So coup franc, they'll play a free kick. So the next day I went to play football with them, and this time I was a little familiar with some of the words they were using the previous day. So it began like that. My interest was now building up. From my days of playing football in the streets, I realized that it was helping my French in a way. I was picking up a lot and I could speak a little more compared to the colleagues I had been grouped back in school in the French class. So I'll be chatting with drivers, I'll be chatting with almost anybody I meet trying to speak their language. So it was more of learn the phrase and use it method I was using. And it began to show in my essays because now I could say a few things, my name, introduce myself. All the basic things we are actually learning on the channel right now. That's how it started. My takeaways from this experience. The first thing I would say is that whatever language you are learning, decide in your mind that you want to speak this language. After doing that, begin to learn a phrase or two a day. Listen to conversations, watch clips, funny clips, movies, read. Try and talk to people after you've learned the phrase. And make sure that the phrase you learn is the correct phrase. It's not like mathematics where you can pick numbers and do the calculations yourself. Some of the things are standard. Tu me manques. I miss you. You don't have to go and sit down and start writing je manque toi and be adding it yourself. No. Just find out how it is said. Tu me manques. I miss you. and then you use it like that. So that's how you pick the phrases. Day by day, you pick one or two, and you keep learning. And at the end of every week, or even every evening, you can sit down and read through every phrase you've learned. Write them down, of course. The third thing to take away from this video is that in your learning, you have to practice. You can practice to yourself in the mirror. You can look in the mirror every day and be practicing. Sometimes I do that myself for French and Hindi and Chinese. I can sit in the mirror and namaste, and I be speaking to myself. Ni hao ma or hen hao ni na or ye hen hao sheshe. Ni chi na li. Or ijota ja me li kai. I'll be speaking to myself in the mirror, communicating. That's a good way to practice. When you do that, you feel comfortable later on speaking to someone because you are familiar with the pronunciation and you know you are getting it right. Am I glad I learned French and I'm learning other languages as well? Yes, I am. It's been helpful academically, it's been helpful career-wise, it's been helpful in just relating to people. You get a lot, you learn a lot. I mean, it opens your mind, your vocabulary. You become a global person. Yeah, let me put it that way. Some of the challenges I faced while learning the language. There are challenges everywhere, and it's not going to be the same, just like the learning experience. Everyone's will vary slightly, even if you all attend the same learning institutions. Some of the challenges I would say, to me, I was already on the field practicing using the language, so I was making all the practical mistakes possible, and I was being teased at, sometimes being corrected, sometimes they'll ask you, are you now learning the language? And I said, oh yeah, I'm now learning the language. And there was nothing embarrassing about it. Some people may not like that experience, but I was okay with it. Point out the mistake and I'll correct myself. So that was one of the challenges. Another challenge I faced was the mixing of the local languages with the French. Now in West Africa, or in Africa in general, almost 95% of the people are bilingual. And it could be local languages mixed with the official language of the country, which the colonizers place on us, let's put it that way. So for instance, my language in Ghana, we use English as the official language, but we have more than 30 languages being used within the country. So you realize that many people are bilingual, and when you speak to people, they tend to mix up certain phrases and words across languages. So you mix the English with P, you mix the English with Gan, you mix the English with Fante, Sisala, Dagani, Dagati, different. There are a lot of languages, and the same thing happened in Cote d'Ivoire. There are many languages as well in Cote d'Ivoire, and you have Jula, Ani, and a lot of local dialects. So you'll be speaking French with someone, and then if you're not very careful, learning academically, or let's say if you're not learning or following any standard French course program like I was doing in school, you hear some words and you may be confused. You hear some local dialects enter the language and you may assume that it's a standard French language. It all comes with the culture, it comes with the way the society is set up. So there's this broken French, also broken English, like we have in Nigeria, Ghana, Pidgin. In Cote d'Ivoire, we have one called Nushi, and it's also mixed. It's a broken kind of French, and it's used mostly on the streets. So you have to be aware of what you're learning. You have to be aware of the limitations and the places where you can use certain phrases, certain words. Something like, je vais paumer, I'm going to eat. I'm going to eat, like I'm going to, I don't know how to put it in English terms. The size of the eating or the intensity of eating the food is quite aggressive. It's like you're hungry, you're going to destroy the food. So I don't know how to put it in English terms. Je vais pommer, je vais daba, je vais te botter, je vais te nyaga. Toi tu me connais. And the language comes with style. You know, there are styles that makes it interesting. The way you pronounce the words, the way you react, you express yourself. The way, let's say something like, I'm going to beat you and you run away. Or if I catch you, you run away. Toi, si tu attrapes là, tu vas bill. And you realize that it's mixed with French and I don't know the exact, is it Nushi or one of the local dialects? That's the Beu part. Now Beu is to run away, but it's not an official French, or it's not a formal French language. It is a local dialect mixed. In Ghana we have similar things like me kokati me pe, me babak. I'm coming back, right? Me babak. And it's mixed. So if you can say me babak in Ghana, of course you can't say me babak in the UK. And that's how our languages are. So we have a lot of bilinguals. You have to be careful when you learn from the street and when you learn in school. You have to identify, you have to be aware. So that was one of the things that it gave me a very good experience, and as well it helped me to know what I was learning. The last thing I did, or I keep doing even as at now to help polish and improve my language, is continuous learning. And I watch a lot of movies in French. I watch a lot of funny clips in French. I follow a lot of Facebook comedians, reading comments, reading their content, watching their videos, commenting myself, interacting with people, and listening to music also. Many French songs on my playlist. I've loaded my playlist with a lot of French rappers. I like rap. These are some of the ways I try to keep up and polish. And of course, reading the news every day. So every day I read the news. I go through the French portions of all the articles. And since it's current affairs, I'm already aware of the trends in the English. So if you come across a new word, it doesn't take long for you to identify what it means. And of course, get your dictionary on hand all the time, because if you're hoping to reach a certain level, you have to work towards it. So that's all. That's how I learned French, and my experience will always be different from yours. But one thing I can tell you is that when you begin to learn it, you're going to be able to speak it. Whatever language you're learning, I wish you are the best. Thank you for watching the video. If you happen to have any experience learning any language that you would like to share, you can WhatsApp me on this number right below. So if you want to share your journey, if you want to share your challenges, the advantages, you want to give us some insight in learning any language, whatever language you learn, if you want to share your experience, just hit me up on the number below on WhatsApp and we'll kick it off. Thank you for watching, and see you in another video.
Speak English. Hindi में बात करो. Chuachonwen. Habla español. Говорить по-русски. Качуй.